Welcome everybody tonight. Thank you so much for joining us on Teton Plants, the co-sponsored with the Teton County Library. We are going to be talking about Firewise practices and Firewise plants with two experts who have been in the region and in the business for quite a while now. And I'm going to do a very brief introduction. I hope they will add in a little bit more of their background. Although Chuck has so much background, it's really hard to even begin to choose which to do. But Bobby will be going first. And so I'll do both introductions and then let them go. But Bobby grew up here in Jackson. She's been a member of the fire department since 2006. That's a goodly amount of time, and is now the wildfire prevention specialist for the county and for the group going on. I get masses of emails and meetings, so I know she's immensely busy, and she has quite a collection, a collaboration of people who are really, really concerned about fire practices in our community as well as ecology. And our other speaker who will be this tonight is Chuck Butterfield. And he grew up here in north central Wyoming. He has then spent time in the Great Plains for 35 years. He came back here for another 11 years ago. He spent 30 plus years in academia, working with those students, getting them up to speed on rangeland management. And he himself has done a heck of a lot of research and all different kinds of aspects of range, including those that eat it, such as bighorn sheep and bison. And then he, after, I don't know, he'll have to tell us whether he's still doing the academia, but he has also spent 10 years working as a rangeland consultant for Y2 Consultants based here in Jackson, monitoring all sorts of NEPA documents and management decisions, and something that's not only complicated science-wise, but also, I would have to say, bureaucratically. He is currently the coordinator of the Grays River Forest Collaborative and the Alpine Area Wildlife Protection Coalition. Again, collaborations, coalitions are part of his raison d'etre here. He's been down to Texas. He's been in Tallgrass Prairie, the Grovant Wilderness here, Black Rock Desert of Nevada, sort of all over the rangeland in different kinds of habitat. He's also done publications. I don't have any lists, which is fine, and is still working with students, and is actually in Colorado now trying to develop a training program for those students who are now actually going into the field and learning how to work with ranchers and other stakeholders. So we have two phenomenal speakers this evening, and I'm going to turn this over to Bobby. And I just want to make sure everybody mutes themselves. If you have any questions as we go along, please put them in the chat, and then I will collect them for the end. And I think that may be the best way, just to hold the questions if we can. All righty. So Bobby, I'm going to turn this over to you, and we're going to do the screen share from your neck of the woods, and away we go.
Thank you, Francis. All right, let me get my screen up here. As Francis said, I work for Jackson Hole Fire EMS. I am also the chair of TOPAC, and we'll get into what TOPAC is in just a minute. But I only have a couple slides for you tonight before Chuck gets into the meat of the conversation. I am going to talk mostly about terms and concepts in our coalition, and it's really timely that we're having this meeting now. Right now, the fire weather outlook predicts abnormally high fire weather and enduring drought conditions. The current wildfires nationally are 38% above the 10-year average. So it's a really good time to talk about prevention, and I think it marries well with native plants. So I just mentioned TOPAC, and that is the Teton Area Wildfire Protection Coalition. This was formed in 2004, and it's a group of partners that you can see on your screen, a lot of federal agencies, non-government organizations, and some homeowners around the region who work to, educate citizens about how to mitigate fire risk. And we provide technical review of field reductions. That's done by our National Park and National Forest Service partners. We provide long-range fire planning, and we work to find funding sources for fuels reduction and education projects. One of the questions people often have is, what is the WUI? And that's the Wildland Urban Interface. You can see on the screen, it's basically where our natural environment and our forests start to commingle with human structures. What you can see on the screen right now is a screenshot from the Teton County Geographical Information System. The hash marked areas are what are considered the Wildland Urban Interface right now. This was from a mapping exercise in 2014 done by TopHack. And these areas were selected primarily because they're adjacent to public lands. They may have critical infrastructure. They're vulnerable landscapes because of their slope or aspect or vegetative materials on top of them. However, I think we could argue now with the uptick in construction in our county, this could very well look all red hash marked in the future. So TopHack works to really engage people who are in the mapped WUI, but we're an organization that's available to everyone in the county and in the region. Chuck is on a very similar coalition based out of North Lincoln County. They're the Alpine Area Wildfire Protection Coalition. And right here, this is the image you're seeing is a wildfire action guide. And this is our primary public education resource. It has 3 main topics. We want to make your home more hardened, less likely to ignite. We want to help control the vegetation around your property and your landscape to prevent ignition or fire spread. And then we want to make sure that you just have situational awareness, that you understand things like red flag warning or what fire restrictions may mean, so that you're prepared if an event comes to our region, that you know exactly what that means. I'm happy to send a link out to this wildfire action guide to Frances so she can distribute to you guys. It has checklists. It's like a 12-page document with simple steps just to keep you safer in this upcoming summer season. Another resource that you're going to hear us using and talking about if you see us out in the public this summer is the Ready, Set, Go document from Teton County Emergency Management. For those of you who don't know what NIXL is, that's our alerting system. If there's a wildfire, a flood, an earthquake, you'll get an alert from Teton County Management to your cell phone if you sign up for this system. And it's really easy to do. You can see at the bottom of the page, you text Teton_Wyoming to 888-777, and you'll be alerted anytime there's an event in your neighborhood or across the whole county. Right now, they have 14,000 subscribers, but you know we have over 20,000 people in our community, so I'd like to see more of you sign up. We also have this action guide that was made by our emergency management. I could send this out as well, and it has locally specific ideas of things that you can do to be more prepared in the event of a wildfire. The best way for us to distribute this information too is through what we call our ambassador program. Our ambassador program was started in 2019, and basically these people are representatives of subdivisions, HOAs, neighborhoods who are willing to cooperate with TopHack partners, get education and resources on best practices, and then share it with their fellow community members. We support these ambassadors by having quarterly meetings. We send out materials, links to current fire information. We attend HOA meetings. We can go to community picnics. They're our liaison to our community, and we value them so much. I would love if any of you have an ambassador that you'd like to assist or would like to become an ambassador of your own area, to reach out to me. It takes a village. That may sound cliche, but we are all a part of this together, and helping our neighbors be more safe while we help ourselves is going to provide safeguards against our vulnerabilities. So TopHack has some upcoming events that we're going to be participating in. On May 7th, we'll be at the Community Wildfire Preparedness Day in Driggs, Idaho. We'll be collaborating with our partners on the western side of the slope to give information to community members. May 9th through 14th is the Teton County Jackson Hole Spring Cleanup. They have a great opportunity this year. If you're going to be doing vegetative management or just, pruning your shrubs or what have you, the first 500 pounds of vegetative debris you can bring to Teton County Integrated Solid Waste and Recycling for free. It usually costs about $83 a ton. So this is a nice tool that they're offering this spring. On May 14th, you'll find us at the Eco Fair. And then on June 22nd, you're going to find us at Slow Foods on the Tetons. We would love for you to engage with us at any of these events, but also all of my information is linked, I think, in Francis's email so that you can reach out and we can get going before some of these events occur. So right here, this is my email address. This is my desk number. You can also just call the fire department or go to our website and reach out. This slide we find a little amusing. That is from the porch of a Saddle Butte home when we had the Saddle Butte fire 2 years ago. It's a sign of keeping combustible materials, flammable fuels on your home. And Chuck's going to speak more as to how we can to prevent little items like this. I know I spoke pretty quickly, but Chuck has a lot to cover, and I'm excited to hear his topics. And if there's any questions, put them in the chat and Francis can relay them to me later. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you, Bobby. That's terrific. And we will just send me the links and we'll get it out, and we can send it also out into when we update our programs on our website. We can just try to put some of that right underneath this program so that everybody will have that information. And Chuck also had sent us out some wonderful lists as well. I think I sent that out with the first email to everybody announcing the program for tonight. So we'll try to see how we can make those available again too as well.
Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. Chuck, you're on.
All right, well, hopefully this works, and that hopefully is my opening slide. Does that look good there, Francis?
It does.
Okay, I just wanted to get to it. So, well, thank you, and thanks Teton Plants. Bobby is one of our wildfire ambassadors for OPAC down in Alpine, and so you can see, our villages are kind of spread out, but there's a lot of commonality to where we're at. So, there's the Greater Yellowstone Fire Adapted Community that's being formed right now. We're trying to look at everything from, the Yellowstone ecosystem clear down to Alpine a little further south, which is, part of that Greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So, there's a lot of people working this direction. And what we really need is people to acknowledge that, it's not, if it'll burn, it's when it'll burn, and to get people to take the steps to do like you're seeing here. Here's a home that was well designed. You can see that, it had plenty of defensible space around it. And we need to get people to understand that, having, spent 25 years in fire, is mainly wildland, but I've been in a few situations like this one, and you'll see another one here in just a little bit, that, we don't want to put people in danger on these. So, the whole idea here is to be able to, not only save your home, but to save human life. And, if you've not taken the effort to, harden your home, harden the landscape, it's really difficult to, request an engine to go in there and sit there in an unsafe situation. And again, you'll see one here in just a little bit where that happened. So what we want to do here is get you to think about firescaping or home hardening or hardscaping. There are some of the newer buzzword terms that we have here. So that's, what I'm going to kind of focus on here, plus some of the plants that are coming up here. So, okay, come on, move. Okay, there we go. And so again, just to reiterate here, we do live in a fire adapted ecosystem. That's one thing that we really need to keep in mind, is that it's adapted to this system, it's going to burn. So overall, there we go. That wasn't supposed to change there, but we'll just keep rolling here. So looking at fire escaping, home hardening, the defensible space, a lot of people think, well, it's just got to be dirt. I can't have, some nice landscaping. I want my place to look good. You can do that. Here's a good example here of, you've got a nice, landscaping area out in here, but then you've got that 5 to 30 foot, which you'll see here in a bit, area here that is defensible space. So if you've got fire rolling out in this area here, it's not as apt to come over here. And again, we a lot of times think that it's that big wall of flames that comes through that gets us. Data showing that it's not that big wall of flames, it's the ember blizzards that come in. So we want to design these so that there's not a place for embers to start to build up and then do piloted ignition and then get some flaming combustion going that then spreads through the house. So that's what we want to do when we're trying to develop some of this landscaping. So what we want to do is not have this. This here is a home that was lost during the Spotted Tail fire. We had a crew up in that area trying to, save some houses that were up there. You can see that, there was trees pretty close to it. What happened here is they got overran, and the firefighters actually got into the house, the shelter, the fire coming through, and then come out. By the time they come out, it was fully engulfed. So, that is something we want to avoid, not only for saving your home, but if we do put firefighters in those situations, to make sure that they're safe and that they can be, they can safely get out of there or have a safe zone to get into. Because really, as Bobby indicated here, fire season's coming. We've been pretty lucky, especially those of us down around Alpine, is that we really haven't had any real major fires down there. People tend to get lazy on that. It's like, oh, we never had fires down here. It doesn't mean that we're not. So, fire season is coming. It's early. As Bobby indicated, there's huge fires going already. That tunnel fire down in Flagstaff, half of the border between Kansas and Nebraska is on fire right now. So that's pretty unusual, and it's fairly dry. So fire season's coming. So what we want to do is, do some designs. And again, I want to stress that the work that we're doing here is not going to make your property ugly. You still have the potential to do this fire escaping. So basically using fire resistant designs, materials, and very carefully selecting the plants to strategically resist the spread of fire to your home. These plants, they'll burn. That does not mean that they're fireproof, but overall, if we can do some proper landscaping, and you'll see this as we go along, get those barriers, especially in that 0 to 5 foot area out from your house, and preferably working that to 5 to 30, and then the 30 plus area, to just reduce the potential of not only that wall of fire, but those ember blizzards that can come over on these. So just again, looking at that, I'm going to be kind of focusing more about the immediate zone, this, 0 to 5 feet out from your property. Look at landscaping, what you can have out there, but also talking a little bit about the 5 to 30 and then the 30 to 100 or 300. Fire does not understand property boundaries. So, you need to kind of work out in some of these areas, and we'll talk a little bit about neighbor impacts on this as well. So, here's a home that has been very, well designed, very safe out there. You've got the metal roof, you've got rock around the base on there. Here's the propane tank, the wood shed is out here, yeah, it's a hassle to have to haul the wood in, but it's better than the alternative. There's a garage, there's a vehicle here, but the shop is out here with like sleds in it and dirt bikes or four-wheelers or whatever. The amount of BTUs that this truck here, if it was to ignite, even if we find logs to be pretty fire resistant, situation like that, it could easily take this, building. Having cars in here, it's one thing they really learned from the campfire in California, is just how many BTUs a burning vehicle actually produces, and how that's part of some of the problems with structure to structure spread. So again, just to kind of look at this from a different aspect here, when we start to look at fire and the process of burning, it's a self-sustaining process. And this is pretty much at the flaming combustion stage here. So we've got ground fuels, we've got surface fuels, and then we've got aerial fuels, which, are basically when we see crown fires going like this. And so we've got these ladder fuels. And historically, what we had is we just had, these little surface fires that occasionally torch a tree and come up here. We've dug this hole for, 110 years or so for, putting out fires immediately. So we've allowed these ladder fuels, these little trees and some of the shrubs and the low-hanging branches to be out there, and allowing these fires to come up here. Surface ground fires, you can do something about them. They're easier to deal with. Once it starts crowning and moving up in that crown, as some of my firefighter students used to say, yeah, it's just when you pull back, get some really cool pictures, because that's heavy air. There's not a lot you can do at that point. So we want this, if we're going to have a fire around a structure, to be down here. And so that's where the responsibility of the homeowner comes in, is to do the work, to space these trees out here so that, we don't have that potential to reduce some of the conifers. The conifers are going to burn much easier than the aspen trees. I have seen aspen torching in Nevada on the Red Cal fire, but overall, they're reasonably safe out there, but the conifers present a problem. So, the standard thing is, top of my bald head is a good measure of the minimum clearance you want to limb the trees up. If you've got short fuels, if you've got taller fuels up there, we generally think of, fire, the flaming top that's out there 3 times the height of the fuels. So if you've got, some shrubs down here, some taller ornamental grasses or something like that, you've got that spatial conifer that you just got to keep out there for shade or whatever. If you want to kind of save that, reduce the potential, look at that fuel that's down here, and then take it times 3, and that's where you want to limb that up, and maybe just a couple extra limbs there. Yeah, it may not be quite what you want, but it beats the alternative. The other thing to think of on slopes, once you start increasing slopes, fire tends to lean out over, preheat your fuels out here, and you have a much better run. So fire generally runs uphill a lot faster. So you start to look at that, you got fire up here, you got that on top of the 60-foot, lodgepole pine, figure 3 times that for your flame lengths, and then you get the ember blizzards. You need to really think about, your downslope areas. I did a fire plan on Spring Creek Ranch, where Amangani's setting some of the Spring Creek Ranch homes up there. If there was an ignition down on Spring Gulch Road, they are highly vulnerable with that slope, that, you could have fire up there 20 to 30 minutes. We modeled that out based on the Swinging Bridge fire. So, consider this. I've looked at a house to buy one time, and it had this situation, the deck hanging out over that, slope down there, and it was gorgeous view. And I was like, oh, I don't think so. So consider the impact of slope on that. So again, I just want to kind of, so that's some of the basics I want you folks to think on, to share with your neighbors, to get people to understand what, the potential is here. Is the, look at the firescaping, the hardscaping, or just defensible space out there. And, Mother Nature has rock walls, and we know from firework that usually those big rock cliffs and those outcrops are a way to stop the fire. We can work off them, know the fire is going to run up there, hit that rock, stop. So we're taking Mother Nature's design and using it. How do we, if we've got a fire coming up slope here, hits this, we've got a hard rock structure here, or we have, a rock walkway, we've got some rocks here. The plants are not kept green, they're dried out, these start to go, you're going to have very short fuel lengths on this. So again, that's what I want you to kind of think about. So some of you may have seen these pictures before. These are the ones I like to throw out and get people to think about, okay, I live in this house. How can I have some, landscaping? So basically you look at this, we've got a gravel rockway here. We've got concrete down here. We've got some rock down in here. We've got a few shrubs. They, may or may not be touching, but the main thing is they're not, touching up here on the structure itself. If we did get an ember shower, we start to collect embers down here, rock doesn't burn real well. Concrete doesn't burn real well. If it's metal, it generally doesn't burn real well. So, there's potential. Lawn furniture sitting out there. If you've got cushions, I've got cushions on mine. They stay in the garage when I'm not sitting on them. That's one thing a lot of people will do, is leave them out there. Here's a good structure. We've got concrete here, we've got gravel, we've got rocks, but we've got some plants out here, some landscaping. Again, we got a little bit of rock up against concrete, but this is all metal up in here. Now, one thing to think about, this is where embers are going to accumulate. You want to make sure that there's not a way for them to get up underneath this metal. We've got a nice green break in here. We've got gravel here. We've got a wood deck. I've got a wood deck, so that happens. How can we minimize the potential for embers to land up underneath there? Something to look at there. Here's a wood sided house, which most of us have wood siding there. But gravel down in this area. You've got metal across the base, and you've got metal flashing along here. Again, what you want this to do is be bent down. You get an ember shower up here. The embers can't sit on a flat surface and begin to pile it here. They're going to roll off, and they roll down in here. Your soffits up here, they've got soffit vents on that. Make sure they've got 1/8-inch metal screen on those. We recommend, tempered glass. That stuff's expensive. And kind of scares you if you're ever going to break it. I yell at my wife all the time for slamming the door because I have tempered glass. If you can get metal screens, the standard is fiberglass. Just little hints like that. Here's a nice landscaping here. Some of it's in pots out in this area. Plants are well spaced here, so you really can't get quote unquote crown to crown spread on these. We've got some bark mulch out here. We'll talk more about that later on, but here's an opportunity. If you got plants growing up alongside the house, make sure they're fairly flashy, don't have a lot of resin and materials like that can allow as ladder fuel to run up the side here. Another good example, here's a brick house. They've got shrubs up there. The broadleaves, generally those don't burn. Got a nice green lawn between there. Where I live, you're not allowed to water a lawn. It's nice to have, but looking at water shortages, I'd rather have the water there for fighting fires than to keep a green lawn. Just, when it dries out, keep it short. Here's another good example, rock in here, got some concrete, we've got a little bit of an issue with this right down on the ground. Again, another nice looking landscaping, well spaced out here. We've got discontinuous fuel. We've got gravel here. We got some wood chips out in here, some plants, rock in here, some other plants here. And then we've got kind of a concrete base down in here. So ways to break up that fire run across there. Again, think 3 times the height. So how long, how big a rock patch do you need to have in here? We've got, people like tall structures. You look at the structured grass here. This is a reed grass here. A lot of people like basin wild rye. That stuff can get 6 to 7 feet in height. They've got that all over on the road going up Spring Creek Ranch, right next to it. If there was a fire starting to push up that hill across, Spring Gulch or from Spring Gulch Road, that's going to bridge across that highway immediately, or the road up there, and that's cutting off not only your evacuation route, so your egress route, but you've also blocked off the ingress of the fire team coming in. And yes, grasses do not have a long residence time to them. They're not going to burn for that long, but you're going to have some pretty serious flames that are coming across there. And then on the other side, you've got some basin big sagebrush that is probably 10, 11 feet tall. And so what we're trying to encourage is reduce that amount of basin wild rye and cut back the sagebrush. People up there love their sagebrush. I can understand, but we also need to have people taking responsibility for, the landscaping that they have. So again, talked about rock walls. Here's some good example. Here's Mother Nature's rock wall. We get a fire running up against that, it's probably not going to push up that. You're going to have some flaming brush down in here, but it could maybe leapfrog up here. You got an ember blizzard, yeah, it could happen here, but if you got a flame front, it's going to stop here. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. You've got a rock wall, you got some bark mulch with some short plants, and then you've got, a metal fence here. So that's going to protect you. You've got this rock walkway here, concrete walkway. Here we've got a retaining wall coming up to a wood structure. I'm not sure about the gas can sitting out here, but something to think on. Some of the trees need to be back a little bit. And then here's another example. So these are ideas that I want you guys to kind of process and go, okay, how can I go out in my yard and create a beautiful landscape that is also going to be fire-wise, going to be defensible space, so that if Bobby and the crew come rolling in here, they can actually easily start to work on this. If it's good defensible space, you've got a good metal roof instead of cedar shakes. There's a reason those are not allowed on the WUI anymore. And the gravel in here, get the trees back, thermal windows, a lot of things that you can do on that. And yes, I understand they cost money. So looking at a fire resistant landscape layout here, you basically want low growing plants. You don't want them up against touching the structure, unless like these here, you're up against rock on those. You want them to be well spaced, like these guys here. Irrigated, keep them well irrigated. One of the things that I see up on Spring Creek Ranch, hopefully nobody there I'm throwing rocks at that are listening, but some places up there have green roofs, and green roofs are intended to be green, not brown. And some of the ones that I've seen up there, they've not kept them irrigated. or you go into the winter and they're, no longer green, they're kind of brown. Those, they need to be trimmed. I understand it's difficult to get up there to do that. But you need to look at keeping those irrigated, knocking down the fuel heights if they die, they become brown, and then properly mulched. Rock's a good mulch. Doesn't burn real well. Well, you can have, your pine bark mulch here, but you want to be able to make sure that there's not anything continuous from this to the structure. This is, rock, but you're good here. But if you have wood siding like I've got, or like this one's got, yeah, you want to reduce that potential. So here's a little deal on, wood mulch. It will burn. Some of that really shredded stuff. You can see pictures here of an ember blizzard that come in there. It's probably, you're not going to get a lot of flaming combustion out of it, but it could skunk around on that. Might, if this is a, volatile plant, get it going. Could work back underneath here, involve the stairs, part of the deck connected to the house. So, trying to keep that out of there. It's a good place for rock, but I understand I have, bark mulch underneath my deck. That's there. It's just, it's something I recognize, but to work on that. So we look at the difference here, and this is a study done out of the University of Arizona, looking at shredded rubber being kind of the worst, pine needles following that, red cedar mulch, then your pine bark nuggets. Mine aren't nuggets anymore. They're pretty well ground down. They're closest to probably composted wood chips. So again, something to think about. We know that pine needles, we need to keep those cleaned out of the gutter, cleaned off the roof, not being, piled up underneath our deck, but some people will use them as mulch. So something to avoid. And then the shredded rubber, which I don't see much around. That's mainly a playground thing, but sometimes there's those little rubber mats that are put around trees. So just something to think about, the rate of spread out there, flame heights, temperature on that. You look at the rate of spread of these guys here, that ought to terrify you a little bit. Want to talk a little bit about neighbors too. You can't control what your neighbors do, but that's one of the purposes of the Firewise ambassadors, as Bobby was pointing out, is to go neighbor to neighbor and talk to them, try to get them to see the potential out there that, I did my thing and see what happened here. Or, Bobby knows the one that I like to point at in Alpine, that, that place would be, well, I should say, let's go look at this one. If it was that place there, if that place started to be involved, these other structures are going to be involved. There's houses above it. And, it's your private property. You can do what you want on your private property, but try to get people to understand that, it's your private property, but you're also endangering my property here. Let's work together to mitigate this so that, I'm not the only one that is, managed to survive these type of situations. And again, these are, ember showers that come in here. And a lot of times that's the case. Fire EMS will come through, the house is standing, they're chasing the flames that are going this way. They come back the next day, and this is what's happened because the embers have built up, piloted, and then involved the structure on that. So there's plenty of cases of where there's been a forest fire come through and somebody forgot to tell the forest that it was supposed to burn. So, work with your neighbors.
Chuck, I have a question on that slide, just because I'm not quite clear why did that particular lot do so well?
I can't really say what happened on that. It was just one that that I could use to make that point that, you can work on that. But I do not know the history behind how that worked there. So sorry. One thing with this is to maintain your structure, your landscaping. You can't just do it once and then walk off and consider it's good. This is from one of our Chipper Day programs at OPAC. This is from the house that was right below mine, and it was densely overgrown. And by working with Dave here, he brought a whole bunch of family and friends, and they had a heyday. And we chipped, I think, you know, 20, 30 cubic yards out of, our subdivision up there. So it does take some maintenance on there. Again, fire resistant landscape plants does not mean they are fireproof. They will burn if not maintained. Some of them will burn, but you want them to burn low and slow if that does happen. But again, maintaining what you have out there. Again, what you want to look for, plants that stay moist, supple, they're not hard leafed or scleriferous type leaves that'll break. They don't accumulate a lot of dead material down at the base. We know aspen leaves will get down here, but it'll I've seen fire just literally kind of set on top of aspen leaves and not get involved on that. Avoid the dead dry material or get it pruned out. Sap is water-like, not resin-like with our conifers. And usually, like you've noticed the smell of conifers, that's because of that resin-like material on that. Again, just looking at this setup, what I want to do is just throw out some plants to you folks that shows you can have native plants. Again, these are fire resilient plants. They're used to being burnt over. That list that Francis handed out that I developed for OPAC, I've used part of Francis's list, part of the Teton Conservation District's list, some of the stuff out of Idaho. And those are native plants that are essentially available within our area. There are varieties that are in there, horticultural varieties that are in there, but overall what they are plants that you can get a hold of locally, and they're going to be adapted very well to our climate and to put out there. Because I want to advocate for native plants. Yes, you can buy some horticultural species and toss out there, but this is Teton Plants, Native Plant Society. I want to keep things as native as possible. And then I have a whole yard full of orchard grass and stuff like that, but that's what I ended up with. So, here's just a list of some of the plants. I'll go through a few of these a little bit more. Since how Francis is recording this, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I'll talk about a few of these plants. I am a grass guy. If you're familiar with the grasses of Wyoming and Alaska and Nevada and like that by Quentin Skinner, I was actually the person that taught Quentin how to teach grasses, and my mentor was Alan Beadle. So Doc Beadle is well known for grasses, especially grasses of Mexico. So that's kind of my background. So I'm a grass guy. So I don't do trees real well. I'm okay on my posies, but it's mainly grasses. So here again, this is the basin where I was talking about earlier. It's a bunch grass, very tall. Again, think of 3 times the height for your flames coming out of here. So again, this is a Calamagrostis back in here. But you can have that in your landscaping. Just make sure it's kind of wide, really spaced out there, have a good barrier on that, and reduce the potential like say some of the stuff there going into Spring Creek Ranch and then down towards one of the well houses, it's just solid in this. If that got involved, you'd have quite a flurry coming out of there. But nice broad leaves, it's a very nice plant for that. Mutton bluegrass or mutton grass, Poa phenorrhena, again, locally available. Nice little small bunch grass. Doesn't get real tall. Has a nice kind of open panicle to it. There's plenty of introduced bluegrasses around. Kentucky bluegrass, which is your standard lawn grass. I think there's like 150 some varieties of that. Yeah, we all love a nice bluegrass lawn, but this is related, but this is native and just going to be kind of a small bunch grass that's out there. Indian rice grass. Indian rice grass is going to be better adapted to drier sites. The other two do well in fairly moist conditions. They're reasonably dry. Indian rice grass is going to be better. Got a nice feathery appearance to it. Native Americans would collect the seeds out of here, very small seeds, grind it to make flour, and to use that to make cakes and stuff like that, adding into various other uses to it. So it's a nice, pretty bunch grass on that. Bottle-bright squirrel tail, this, a lot of people will confuse this with foxtail barley. This has got kind of a stiffer onto it than foxtail barley. Foxtail barley is usually more, wetland type sites and more alkaline, saline type sites for it. This is adapted better again to drier sites, but it'll do otherwise as well. Western wheatgrass. The Western wheatgrass provides some nice blue coloration in there. It's kind of got this bluish color that you see here. It is a rhizomatous species. It will spread. It's not going to be bunchy. It'll form colonies out there. It does well depending on, if you have the natant form in kind of wetland situations, all the way to a fairly dry upland type situation. It's very similar to thick spike wheatgrass that's out there, Eolmus lanceolatus. They're going to appear very similar, except for thick spike generally doesn't quite have the bluish. It's more of the lighter greenish color that you have in here. And selecting some of these species, you can see the anthers on some of these. That's part of the color that you get with grasses is, what you might have out there for anthers. Here's slender wheatgrass, usually a little more mesic type species, a bunch grass. It's out there, again, native, available out there. So forms nice little bunches, works well in, rocky type plantings out there. Very similar, spike inflorescence on that you see with the Western wheatgrass. Needle and thread, again, kind of a drier species, so works well in some of the landscaping that you can have out there. The issue with needle and thread is the needle on that. That can be kind of painful. You do have to deal with that. But when this is, you have these needle and thread years, when this is out there growing and the waving aspect of it, it's pretty spectacular out on a prairie. Tufted hairgrass, again, this is a bunch grass you can see here. It's also called salt and pepper grass. My picture didn't really quite catch that, but it's kind of got a black and white appearance to it. More of a wetland type species, does better mesic wise, riparian. So it makes a nice interface on some of that. Spike tricentum, it's smaller bunch grass. There are some other tricenums that are available that are native, a little bit taller species that are out there. But, a smaller bunch grass, again, that makes it easier to spread these plants out when you've got them. Mountain brome, Bromus marginatus, Bromus carinatus, California brome, they've been kind of lumped and split and back and forth. But native species, again, the anthers provide some of the appearance to it. Doesn't, it's semi-bunchy, not necessarily rhizomatous, and do not confuse it with smooth brome that's out there, but provides a nicer, taller structure in your landscaping. Idaho fescue, there are a ton of varieties, horticultural varieties, but it's a nice bunch grass, kind of have bluish coloration to it. This is winter condition to it, but very attractive plant, but again, easy to have bunches of it out there. I'm running short on time, so I'm going to try to roll here. Francis, if you need to yell at me, feel free to yell at me. So evening primrose, several evening primroses that are out there. Yellow coloration, we were handing some of those out with OPAC as a fire resistant plant out there. A lot of them are white that we have that are native. They kind of start out, have this pinkish coloration. So you get a lot of variation in some of the colors with these. Scarlet Gilia, or cardinal flower as it's known, really gives you that pop of red. If you drive to Idaho Falls, you come up out of Swan Valley, and that cliff face there as you're coming up on top of Antelope Flats there's a lot of this growing out there. Really striking when it's flowering. This is a short-lived perennial though. The stuff that I've had on my property, it's kind of died out. So it's only going to be out there, 5 to 7 years. So don't get some of it and expect it to last forever. This is what the rosette looks like when it comes up. I've had a lot of people confuse that with some of the knapweeds and stuff. But just texture wise, you can feel the difference on that. Sticky geranium. Yep, you can see these glandular hairs. Worked on some plots up on Granite Creek. We were back in on the Highline Trail. You come out of there and you just got everything in the world stuck to you. There's also Richardson geranium, which is a white different species, Geranium richardsonii, that is available as well. And then we have our domestic geraniums as well. Taper tip hawksbeard, another one that's out there, gives you some yellows. The foliage on that, the leaves, are very attractive. Well, at least I think so. With the dissections in there, that tapering tip up there. This is hawksbeard, not hawksweed. Hawksweed is, somewhat related, but some people get that confused between hawksbeard and hawksweed. Yarrow, easy to grow. Man, I got that stuff growing everywhere out on the road. Very easily established. Some of the firework I've followed up on, they've planted this, great success to that. These over here on the right are some of the horticultural varieties that you can find. There's also a yellow one out there. The native one is white, may have some different tinges to it. That's how they've got over here. The leaves on it are very fern-like, pretty attractive on that, even when it's not flowering. Arrowleaf balsam root, we've all seen this growing around. Not always the easiest plant to establish. I followed up on a fire out on the Black Rock with this stuff. I have never seen balsam root, hip high. Some of that stuff just does amazing. And then Native Americans used to take the root and roast it and ferment it and make an enjoyable drink, shall we say, for after this talk. Pussy toes, Antennaria species, a really nice ground cover. So that a lot of people want ground covers out there. I've got quite a bit of this around my place. The pussy toes part, my wife loves taking pictures of this. It's not anything that's going to be super flashy for a long time, but you get the ground cover. And this stuff really is pretty fire resistant on that. The larkspurs, people a lot of times will shy away from them because they are poisonous, but pretty much poisonous to livestock, especially cattle. sheep can eat it. It's an alkaloid for a poisoning principle to it. You've got lower larkspurs, taller larkspurs. So I just kind of dump them together as larkspurs. Fireweed, yeah, this is from Yellowstone following the fires of '88. This stuff is, almost very weedy. I've got it coming up through my deck. All over my place, really attractive. Even when it goes to seed, really looks nice out there. Lupines, they will fix nitrogen in your soil. There's a number of them. Most of this is Argenteus. They've dumped a whole bunch of the lupines into Lupinus argenteus. I learned it as caudatus. But tail cup lupines, again, good source of nitrogen in the soil out there. Attractive. There's some that we don't have around here that are a pretty mix of yellow and blue flowers on that. Harebells, bluebells, I kind of stuck these together because people tend to confuse them. Harebells don't last a long time, but a bigger companionate flower to them. And then, tall bluebells here, a lot more blue flowers to them. Hitting shrubs. Yeah, cool. Francis isn't yelling at me yet.
Yeah, I'm about to.
Rhodosier dogwood. I will run through them quick here then.
Yeah.
Rhodosier dogwood, nice white flowers, pretty in the fall and winter. Shrubby cinquefoil, ornamental, used quite a bit, more of a wetland type species. Chokecherry, we all know about chokecherry on that. Russet buffalo berry, again, prefers back in the forest, a little bit more riparian area. The reddish dots on the foliage is very attractive. Flowers are pretty unremarkable. Deerbrush, cool little pipe, like smoking pipe flowers on it. A very distinctive leaf on that. Bitterbrush, excellent wildlife forage. This is fairly flammable. You don't want this real close. I've got probably 70, 80 plants in my place. They're all well away and they can get large. Bearberry, kinnikinnick, good ground cover. Serviceberry, stinky flowers. Some people disagree with that, but stinky flowers on that. Really moose, I've got some of this. The moose love it. Trees, Rocky Mountain maple. People get annoyed by the samaras, but the kids love playing with them. I just grabbed bed willow, some of the willows, some of the wetter, music areas. Narrowleaf cottonwood. We all complain about cotton season. One of the things with it does sprout from the trunk and it sprouts from the base. Some of these old trees get hollowed out. You get fire in there. They can be kind of a challenge there. Alder, again, looking at some of the more mesec wetland type trees that are in there. Aspen, we all know aspen. I just want to caution about weeds. Knapweed is big, especially in our country. People will think that's cornflower. I've got a neighbor that put in a wildflower bed. Whenever they're gone, Chuck goes and does a lot of weeding. Then they come back and have all these plants pulled up, and I blame the deer. Shasta daisy, it gets in there. People will mistake tansy for yarrow. And good old musk thistle was actually brought into California as an ornamental. So please avoid those. So some sources for plants for restoration, gives you some ideas on ones there. Please don't just, you're on vacation and you buy a pack of wildflower mix, or you get, Miracle Grows wildflower mix. Please don't do that. Actually get, plants that are out there. So want to give a plug to Teton Conservation, their effort. Trevor Bloom just, finished this up, is out there. Keep in mind, some of the plants that he has listed in here are not fire resistant. Morgan's got this pollinator program. If you want to get some of these bare roots stock out of that, get a hold of Morgan, Teton Conservation. It's on their page there. You've got to sign up for some of these, and they're going fast. So if you want to pick some of these up, get a hold of Morgan. And then just throwing out real quick here, this is the last slide, Francis. This is my coalition, the Alpine Area Wildfire Coalition. Some of the same people that Bobby's dealing with, like say Bobby is one of our ambassadors. And then I'm also doing the coalition there. So I blanked out there, so I must be done.
Terrific. Thank you, Chuck. And if you could maybe take off, there you go. Perfect.
Yep.
And we're all back together again here.
So sorry about going long, but it was Bobby's fault. She went too long. So
yeah, we had some time with the introduction stuff too. So I take some responsibility. I had a couple of chat questions that came in. And the first one that came in was of Susan Marsh. And she said, how do you deal with the small lots, such as in town, and also neighbors overhanging trees?
The overhanging trees, check with the county, but most places, and I can't really speak directly for Teton County, but most places, if their tree is hanging over your property, you do have the right to cut them down, or not cut the tree down, but to trim the branches off that are hanging over. If it's hanging over your house, it usually ends up being a fight. But I've known of plenty of other places where that's been the case with their tree hanging over your property, that you take that side and trim it up so that you avoid that. Some of the smaller lots, again, smaller plants. Try to, get some of the smaller bunch grasses, some of the smaller ones. And again, the critical part is that 0 to 5 foot chunk out there that, you can have the plants out there, like some penstemons or anything like that. And then, if you want to put some bark mulch, make sure it's like the composted stuff. And then, put rock along there. And again, it kind of depends on the siding. Is there potential for flames to get up underneath there or to blow up underneath that? So it's just a matter of plant selection, some of the shorter stuff. But again, with some of the different laws that Teton County has, check there, because I know that they're one of the subdivisions that if your tree is over X amount of height and it obstructs your view of the Tetons, you can force them to cut that down. It's in the HOA on that.
Chuck, I was going to see also if Bobby had a sort of response to the same question, because working in town.
Yeah.
One thing that's really good to consider on these smaller properties is the opportunity to use potted plants. It's keep a green lawn and then use, portable plants that you can put in a garage if we're finding ourselves in an event. Also, always fire resistant plants like Chuck recommended. And yes, you do have the legal right to cut down branches that overhang your property, especially if you are concerned that they are a wildfire threat. But like Chuck mentioned, that's not always popular. However, that's why we're working on these neighborhood ambassador programs in Lincoln County and in Teton County to help people just have dialogues with their neighbors and try to see eye to eye or come to an agreement.
So they could call you up, Bobby, or your department, and sort of see who the ambassador may be in that area, and see how you could sort of work it gently with the neighbor.
Absolutely.
And Susan, did that help answer your question?
Yes, thank you. My concern about cutting the branch at the fence line is it's a mature spruce. And if you don't cut that branch off at the trunk, it's going to look like hell. So I will talk to my neighbor about that.
Yeah. Well, and as top hack, op hack, we will go, as Bobby indicated, to HOA meetings and have those discussions there. Because I know where I live, there is part of the HOA or the POA rules that you cannot cut down a live tree over 3 inches in diameter. And I'm, you know, working hard to get that changed because that needs to be done for some of those ladder fuels that are out there and for thinning around the properties.
Great, thank you. Gail Gordon had a question about what distance from the house to sagebrush is okay.
It depends on which sagebrush and the height of it. If you're looking at, like basin big sage that can get up there, anywhere from, 4 to 12 feet. Some of them even have been 24 feet that they've, found that, again, figure 3 feet on, the flame lengths on that. So if you've got a patch of sagebrush that is on the hill, I'm thinking like Spring Creek Ranch, that, there's sagebrush that's up on the flat up there. And, then it's down the hill. So you get that increased flame length coming up there and then up on the, flat. So what I've recommended is they take all of that sagebrush away from the Spring Creek Ranch, house, not houses, but the rentals there, and take it clear back to the edge of the hill to take that back. So again, if you've got Wyoming big sage, most of ours is mountain big sage. Wyoming big sage is, 2-3 foot in height. The mountain big sage can be about 3 or 4. So I would keep it definitely out of the 0 to 5 area there, and keep it out to probably the edge of the 30 foot. And then depends on what's over it. If you've got some conifers up there, again, think about, that flame height up into there. So that'd be my thoughts with your sagebrush. It's pretty, got a lot of volatile oils.
So I have a question for you all, which is maybe not kind. Many of us are also very concerned about the wildlife and making sure that the birds are there and all of that is still around us. And is that something that we just have to give up on when we're doing our Firewise landscaping? Or because it's sort of the complete opposite in concept to what a lot of the books have been talking about, sort of the sort of naturalistic type of design, and having indeed a cluster of trees and your shrubs going up so that the birds like it all better and it provides a little bit more sense of habitat.
You can balance that out. It's like many things, it's a balancing act. For my place, like I said, I got 50, 60, 70, bitterbrush plants that are out there. But I keep it, around my house, I keep things kind of mowed down, but I've got plenty of chickadees and wrens, and the grosbeaks are all over the place that are out there. So I think you balance that. We've got snowshoe hare that, spend time around there. It's a matter of trying to find that balance of looking at it. If you're an ember coming in, or what is going to ignite that structure, you want to avoid that. You want to keep your home, but you can have those wildlife plantings further out there. And I think that Morgan's project with some of the pollinators, that gives you that opportunity there. So it's kind of a balancing act, I would say. To really just, you can have those wildlife plants. Bitterbrush, again, is probably not the best because it's pretty volatile oils to it. So, probably my nearest one is, this scrawny little one that's probably about 20 foot from the edge of my house, but most of it's out there in that 100-foot zone. And I have moose in the yard, I have elk in the yard, I have deer, I got my snowshoes running around. So you can do that, but a lot of mine is kind of what you consider an ecological desert because it's smooth brome and orchard grass and stuff like that. I'm getting my wildflowers up and going. I've got about 114 species that I've found on my little less than an acre. So
Yep. And I think Bobby's got a question or a point too.
Sure. I'd just like to add on to that, like as Chuck was saying, if you look at some of the documents they provided, they'll show really in that first 5 feet, we don't really want to see vegetation, but then they'll show out to 30 and then out to 50 and beyond. And it's showing how you can begin to cluster more and have larger diameter materials, because we need to think of defensible space and vegetative management, not just fuel loading to protect our homes. Defensible space is also there to give a safe place for firefighters to come in and do suppression. So if you have these giant shrubby conifery yards, we may not be able to help you. Likely we won't. So this vegetative management is duofold. We want your house to be somewhat self-sufficient, and we also want to be able to still help you and not endanger ourselves.
Good point. No, that's really important. And I think we haven't been at the fire person perspective enough on this. So thank you, Bobby, for adding that. Any other questions out there? And you can just unmute yourself and ask. We're a small group at this point.
I see one there. It says, what is our fire risk in town, Jackson? So I'd throw that at Bobby.
Fire risk in relation to
Oh, there it is.
to what specifically?
Meg, do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, I guess I'm just wondering about, we live in the town and the urban, like what, a lot of this advice isn't, doesn't fit our house necessarily. And, on one side of our house, we have spruce trees really close. And I'm just curious, like, I know a town can burn down, but what is how vulnerable is Jackson to a fire coming in? And what might we be able to do in I don't really want to cut the spruce trees down, but they're like right beside our house, which is wooden, and the neighbor's house, which is wooden. And so.
Right. And we don't advocate for everyone cutting down every tree. That's not sensible or aesthetic or why people live here. But if you do want to keep your trees, you need to consider maybe hardening your home. Like if you have a combustible roof, maybe get a non-combustible roof so you're not getting needle accumulation. Like Chuck said, be putting bark or get rid of the bark mulch in that first 5 feet, because if we do get like ember showers, those are going to hit your roof and roll down like right where your drip line is. That's where you're going to be able to start seeing ignition points. So harden your home if you don't really want to do a lot of vegetative management, because we are at risk. We are in a hole of mixed conifers. And we are at 70% of our snowpack. We have really dry soils. The outlook is grim. I don't want to cry wolf though. If we got the right amount of moisture at the right time, that could really improve the moisture of our $10 and $100 fuels. That could change things for us. It did last year, but it's not in the forecast. If you were here in 2012, it was actually only residents in the town of Jackson who had to evacuate. So although you may not be in the mapped WUI, our vulnerability is everywhere in this area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Good
I
question.
have
Thank you,
been
Bobby.
evacuated twice on, and I lived kind of on that interface between Ponderosa Pine Forest and Shortgrass Prairie. So it can happen, but what you can do to minimize your house, make sure you got a Class A type roof out there. If you've got wood siding, yeah, it's expensive, I understand, but to look at maybe hardy board siding, some of that cement board siding to replace that. Again, tempered windows, little things like that, and just, keeping firewood away from your house. You know,
Chuck, is there any treatments of, and Bobby, you may be able to answer this even better. Are there particular treatments that somebody could do over wood that would reduce the fire sensitivity of it? I mean, it was a chemical treatment type of thing. I mean, I know stains and things are not necessarily good because they've got other chemicals in them, but are there some things you can treat it with which make them less vulnerable?
I'm gonna leave that to Bobby. So.
Susan seems to have.
Susan.
Susan, you have
Well,
a-
I was just gonna say, I'm ordering something called FR Clear from a company called Flame Off. And it is a treatment for wooden decks. Never tried it, don't know how good it is, but it's better than replacing my deck.
Yeah, there are fire retardant applications you can put on specifically wood parts of your structure. Like to advise, a lot of them say they have like a 5 to 10 year warranty. I wouldn't buy into that. We are at such a high altitude, our UV rays and just our weather patterns make those things degrade fairly quickly. That's why we don't even allow fire retardant wood shakes in the community anymore, because people are replacing the roofs every 10 years, but science has shown that these roofs are no longer flame resistant after like 2 or 3. But there are materials, and using them is probably a better step. I know I couldn't replace a whole deck either right now, Susan. So looking for opportunities to use some of the same products, as long as not going to leach other chemicals into the plants I'm trying to keep around my
Right.
defensible space.
Oh, this stuff says it's eco-friendly and non-toxic and all that stuff. So we'll see.
Awesome.
Good, terrific. Lots of.
Oh, I was just going to mention to Meg, one of the Forest Service's summer home groups that had a whole bunch of, it was in the forest. They cut the limbs. I can't remember the height, 12 feet or something. And to make sure that there weren't a bunch of limbs near the houses. And then as long as the crowns didn't touch, that was the fix for that particular one. So if you have that opportunity, that might work.
Thanks, that's good.
Yeah, that one graphic I had there showed, what you want kind of for spacing. As you get further out, you get out in that 100+ zone, you can have like 6 feet between the crowns. But yeah, if you can avoid crowns touching, that is a key one. And one thing too, we're really dry, but down in Alpine, we got really good spring moisture or fall moisture. And then we got, some good moisture since then. So it's really kind of muddy around there. That a lot of times will result in some of your smaller, as we call small, flashy, fine fuels to build up. And so sometimes having those really moist years doesn't always pan out the best or the situation. So it's a matter of not being comfortable with that. It's like, well, we got a lot of rain, we got a lot of grass, and the grass is green. But then, like around my place, I try to avoid as long as I can mowing it, because as soon as I mow it, then it dries out. And then I've got additional efforts to work on that. So.
Terrific. Bobby, do you have any final thoughts to our group here?
I would just like to thank you again for your engagement and for your advocacy. And like I said, native plants, as Chuck said, are probably the best species to be putting around our homes for more than just wildfire reasons. And I support your message as well. And Chuck, don't cut your lawn anytime soon. The bees need the dandelions.
Oh, trust me, I am not allowed to do anything with the dandelions around my place. So
Thank you, Bobby. All righty. Well, I think it's getting definitely near our dinner time, and maybe some of that arrow leaf balsam root brew that one could be partaking in. And so thank you, Chuck and Bobby, for presenting for us this evening and for everybody participating and for your really good questions, because that is what sort of brings this all to life and makes it relevant to everybody. And we're getting some nice thank yous from the audience as well. So thank you, gang. I'm going to sign us off and I hope to see you around town. I hope to see you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe out there.
Yep.